Hi, Angela Wolf, fashion designer and online instructor. And in this episode, we're taking a tank top and I'm flipping it around and turning it into a back wrap. Now it could hang open, which is kind of trendy when you're wearing leggings, but then when it comes to working out, you can just take this and tie it up in the back. A very simple, stylish way to do this, to go over your sports bra. So I started with just a simple t-shirt. The front, I didn't make any changes to. The back, I did. And all I did was added a section here because this will hang open, but I just added a section. So it's a parallel line that I'm adding to the outside, and I believe it was 2.5 inches, but you can do whatever you want to. So for this, because I only have enough paper for 2 inches, I'm just gonna draw this at 2 inches, and you'll get the idea. That's my new center back seam. Pretty easy alteration, right? Okay, so on your fabric, when you cut it out, which I have a piece right here, and I've done this to both of them, what you want to do is you want to mark this center back, your original center back, because that's where this needs to cross over to make sure your back isn't too big. So if you look closely here, see this crossover? You can see the V underneath there. You need to make sure it's still going to fit you. So that's why we do that notch right there. So the first thing we're going to do is press this back. This is going to be your center back seam. You know, if you've been watching the whole season as we've been sewing athleisure wear, there's a lot of ways to hem this. Today, I'm going to use the double cover stitch. It just adds a real sporty look to this, and it stretches. So I'm going to use the clapper, get this a nice crease. You don't have to press this, by the way, but if you're working with fabric that's really slinky and you're trying to get it through the cover stitch, it just helps. So let's go to the cover stitch machine. So this is, I have a piece in here already stitched, so I've already tested this. So I'm just gonna lift this up and slide this under. I can stitch from one piece of fabric to the next with this double cover stitch. I'm gonna use a contrasting thread so you can see it. Let's make sure it's stitching right. That looks great. I actually kind of like the gray on the yellow. All right. Does this remind you of anything when we made that skirt to go on the leggings? A very similar hemming process. All right. Get to the top, and I'm going to throw in the other back piece. Might as well just get these done right away. Make sure I'm pressing it the right way. There we go. Again, just making sure that my fold is right. I'm just lining the fold up with a marking on the machine. That just keeps the stitch straight. I just added that because I do get that question a lot. Where are you looking on here? All right, and as I mentioned, I would like to just put this other piece of fabric back in here so when I'm ready to stitch again, it's all ready to go. That looks really nice. All right, and here's another one. It's kind of weird with that other color fabric. That looks great. All right, so from the right side of the fabric, we stitched that so well, it's hard to tell which one was the right side. This is the back, and then here is my other back. Here are my notches. I want to line those up. Again, what I was trying to explain is because if you line those up, then this section here will be the exact same width with what you had for your pattern. That's why we use that. So for now, I'm just going to use a basting stitch to keep these in place. It's a straight stitch with a stitch length 5.0. And this notch is pretty low, but I'm just going to baste right below it. All right, that's all we need to do there. And now let's go ahead and stitch our front piece to there. right sides together. Now, if you have a serger, this would be a great opportunity to use your serger. You could finish this top really quickly. But I'm using stretch thread, so I'm just going to use a straight stitch, set at a stitch length of 3.0. Make sure if you're using stretch thread that you wind the bobbin slowly though, because I have it in the bobbin and the top. Stitch our shoulders. And we'll go down the other shoulder here. Again, I'm using contrasting thread on here just so you can see what's going on. Now this fabric doesn't fray, so if you don't have a serger, you really don't have to do anything except press this to the back. I'm gonna go ahead and just run this down the side. You've watched me in previous episodes do binding at the neckline, things like that. So let's just stitch down one of the sides so you can kind of get an idea of what this is gonna look like. Now when I cut this, I was altering the pattern, so this is not the same length, but that's not because it's stitching incorrectly. It's just because when I cut it for samples. Okay, now let's go to the other side. Now even if you stitch this with the sewing machine, and I am using a stretch needle as well, you can use a number 11 stretch or a number 12 jersey would probably be the two best for this top. You could still run it through a serger if you felt more comfortable stitching it first before you ran it through a serger. All right. And now this side's shorter, so just FYI, that was just when I cut the samples. I'm sure when you would have your top, you would cut it the same length. But if you didn't, you can fix it right now. All right, so there's our sides. Let me just flip this around so you can see what this is looking like. Somewhere, here we go. There is the flip side. It's looking really nice. So I'm just going to add binding just a little section to show you what this back area is going to look like. So just fold your binding in half. You can have the binding end at your center back or your shoulder, whichever one you feel better with. And for now, I'm only going to stitch the back side. I want to just show you one quick thing here. Again, when you get to this section of the back that's like your lower back, you want to stretch this ribbing just a little bit when you're attaching it. It will prevent your neckline from stretching out. And back and around. And you would do the same ribbing at each armhole. But I'm just going to go just a little bit further, show you what this looks like, because I want to show you if for some reason when you designed your pattern, if it ended up shorter like what I just did here, how you'd fix that. So this is our finished neckline. You could run it through the serger. If you didn't want to run it through the serger, the next thing I would do is after you just want to lay it flat, give it a little pressing, the next thing I would do is run this with a triple stitch or a decorative stitch because you want to keep that seam allowance out of the way. But the first thing you want to do is trim off any excess fabric. So that's pretty wide. So let's get rid of that. You don't need all that bulk. See what I mean? And if you stitch right along, and we did that in a few episodes, so you don't need to see that again. And now let's just take a look at the bottom. See how the back is a little bit longer than the front because I cut my pattern that way. To fix that, if you did the same thing, all you have to do is trim that off so it's the same length. You just want it to be a parallel. There you go. And I would do the same thing to the other side. So that is how simple it is to make this cute back wrap. Looks the same thing as what I have up here. It can hang down or it can wrap. And if you look here, I had put the binding on the armhole. Attach the binding to the front. Here's my center back seam. In the front, it just hangs towards the front a little bit, and on the back, again, because it's a stretch fabric, you can tie it. The only other thing is you might want to use a t-shirt knit. That would be great, and this would make a great bathing suit cover-up. So I hope you've enjoyed all the athleisure wear that we've sewn this season, and I look forward to seeing what you're working on.